Welcome to part 2 of the Poetry Interpretation Kit. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Just to go into a little more detail, one of the features of poetry, one of the answers to what makes that a poem is repetition. So if you have a particular rhythm in a poem and you repeat it in a particular pattern, we call that meter. If you repeat particular sounds in particular ways, we talk about rhyme. There are also names if you repeat words, clumps of words together. So anaphora, for example, is where you repeat the first word or the first phrase in a section or a poem. This is a poetic technique used in the King James Version of the Bible a lot, and they used it there because it's a poetic device originally used in Hebrew. It shows up in Aramaic, the other languages that what we call the Bible was written in. But blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the peacemakers. If you are familiar with the New Testament of the Bible, that's what we call the Beatitudes. That's anaphora. A refrain is a chorus or a repeated chunk of words. And then there are times when you can repeat the syntax or the sentence structure of a poem, and you can see the parallelism for that. Let's look at some repetition with Keats. So I've repeated some lines here from To Autumn. And sometimes like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with a patient look, thou watchest the last oozings hour by hour, hours by hours. So repetition of a certain rhythm is meter. This is, like a lot of poetry written in English at the time, what we would call iambic. And that means the rhythm goes da-dum, 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 da-dum. So we can read it emphasizing that. And sometimes like a gleaner, thou dost keep. Then he's playing with it a little bit. We wouldn't say steady. Steady thy laden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look, thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. It doesn't have to fit it exactly in order for it to count as iambic. And if we're interested in what kind of iambic meter this is, we can count the number of times he does those particular units of rhythm. And sometimes like a gleaner, thou dost keep, that's 5. And so not surprisingly, there's a name for that, iambic pentameter. Steady thy laden head across a brook again. So we have 11 lines in one stanza of iambic pentameter. Then we have repetition of certain nouns, brook and look. And if you look at those stanzas, every word, end word, rhymes with another word in the stanza, but it's not every other word or 2 ones in a row. He mixes that pattern up a little bit. I'm not seeing the syntax too much here. Across a brook and by a cider press, that's the same structure, but I don't know that that's actually enough to comment on there. Here are some more sound devices. Onomatopoeia is a word that sounds like the thing it describes. That could refer back to the oozing. I think that might be onomatopoeia. Fart, belch, those are examples of onomatopoeia that Keats does not use. Assonance is repetition of vowel sounds. Consonance is repetition of consonant sounds anywhere other than the very beginning of the words. When you have repetition of consonant sounds at the very beginning of words, we call that alliteration. One of the best examples of alliteration are tongue twisters. So here's one that I sometimes am able to say correctly. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? I did it. When I used to say that to my son when he was little, I get to the question at the end, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? He'd just go, I don't know. Euphony is pleasant sounds. Cacophony is harsh sounds. Sibilants I've mentioned just because there's a theory. Sibilants are, that's S sounds, and there's a theory that our brain notices them because on some basic primal level, we're still poised to hear that snake hiss, even though most of us don't really run into snakes very much. Lots more sound devices. Here's some sound devices with Keats. Oh, here's a better one. Oozing might or might not be. I'm not actually sure something makes a sound when it oozes. Maybe it does. Onomatopoeia, the word that sounds like the thing it describes, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. Twitter is not just a social media platform. It's a sound, and that's what birds make. Assonance, repetition of vowel sounds. If you look at these lines down at the bottom, let's see. Not seeing as many of those as I am consonants, because I do see we have alliteration with the mist and mellow and maturing, but there are other S's in there, so the sibilants. And I would say in general, this is very pleasant sounding. Season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun. So let's stop here and I'll come back very quickly for part 3.